Jai Prabhu. So we did a pretty cool tour. We went to Vrindavan. We went to the Samadhi of Raghunatha dasa Goswami in Radhakund. By the way, if you ever go to Radhakund, there's all sorts of mantras floating around, which, Prabhupada didn't appreciate, Bhaktisiddhanta didn't appreciate, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. For example, you can go to Jagannath Puri and there's this, there's the Samadhi of Haridas Thakur, the Namacharya, right? And it's right across the street from ISKCON Jagannath Puri, which actually was, or still is, I guess, spiritually, the Bhajan Kutir of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Like he bought a house and had his Bhajan Kutir literally like a 25-second or 30-second walk to the Samadhi of Haridas Thakur. Has anyone gone to the Samadhi of Haridas Thakur? Maybe Golokananda Priya, have you been? You're still muted.
Yeah, I've been there.
You've been there. So why am I mentioning that is because it's a historical fact that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, was openly against the kind of mantras and practices that the Babajis or the the Sampradaya that own the Samadhi Mandir of Haridas Thakur chant. Like you go there, you'd want to be, you'd want to, this is like the Samadhi of Haridas Thakur, you'd want to be able to sit there and chant the Maha Mantra, right? But unfortunately, I mean, I guess Krishna's in control, so there must be a reason, but unfortunately you sit down there and then they chant something like Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Radhe Krishna, Hare Ram, or Radhe Krishna, Gaur-Nitai, Radhe Shyam, some sort of combination of a mantra that that Prabhupada didn't approve of, Bhaktivinoda Thakur didn't approve of. So why do I mention that? Because if you go to Vrindavan, to Radhakund, and there you go to Raghunatha dasa Goswami's Samadhi, which we saw in the first picture. As if you notice, there were some guys on the right sitting there. They have a 24-hour, and so it's literally right on the bank of Radhakund. And the devotees there have a 24-hour kirtan going on, like 24 hours. And the good thing is that they only chant the Maha Mantra. So it's like the only the only sort of ISKCON legit or ISKCON approved, or let's say Prabhupada approved or Prabhupada favorite kind of 24-hour kirtan mandala, which is right there. And so if you get to go to Radhakund, I really recommend you go to Raghunatha dasa Goswami Samadhi, just sit there with these Babajis and just chant Hare Krishna right on the bank of the Radhakund. As we'll see in the next module when we touch on nectar of instruction, Rupa Goswami says there's no greater, those who perform devotional service on the bank of the Radhakund are the most fortunate souls in the universe. So chanting Hare Krishna, as you know, is the most important devotional service in a way. So when you do that, like literally right on the bank of Radhakund, and you've got Raghunatha dasa Goswami's Samadhi right there, it's a really powerful experience. So we were just there, and then we went to Raghunatha dasa Goswami's Samadhi, which is in the Radharaman temple courtyard. As I was saying, who's not familiar with the Radharaman deity? Maybe Jacob and Sorrel?
Not actually, no.
I was talking about him last night with a friend, with Jesse.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So what's the story behind that?
So I'm not sure of the particular personality, but one of the acharyas in our line was hunting for Shilas.
Raghunatha dasa Goswami, and it's disappearance day. The reason why we're speaking about these three, is because today is their disappearance day. So yeah, so it was, sorry to interrupt you, it was Raghunatha dasa Goswami.
And then the Shila jumped into his bag. Is that correct?
From my understanding is that like they jumped into his hands, or into his bag, that it was maybe like there were 8 Shilas that popped into his palms when he was looking for Shilas on the bank of the Kali Gandaki River in Nepal. So he trekked by foot all the way from Vrindavan to the Kali Gandaki River. And then
he first he didn't want the Shila. He didn't feel like he was qualified.
Yeah, he didn't feel qualified. So
and then the the Shila wanted to be worshipped by him, and I know that eventually he wanted to dress the Shila, and so
Before you get there, the way I understood the story, and I think it's the standard story, he went all the way back to Vrindavan with these 8 Shilas, and then in Vrindavan he's like, you know what, I'm too fallen to worship these Shilas. It makes me feel so embarrassed because I got Shilas, and like, oh my God, like what, like Raghunatha dasa Goswami thinking he's too fallen to worship the Shila, and I'm like, like I'm qualified to do this. So he treks all the way back to the Kali Gandaki River, like all the way back with the Shilas, and like puts them back in the Kali Gandaki River. And according to the story, that's when they pop back into his hand. And he was like, and he put them back into the river, and they pop back into his hand, like several times. And he was like, okay, okay. So he treks all the way back for the second time to Vrindavan and starts worshiping them. And then after some time, seeing how the other Goswamis of Vrindavan have full-fledged, I wouldn't say 3-dimensional forms, because the Shilas have a 3-dimensional form, but arms and eyes and a form that can actually be dressed and decorated. He felt like he wanted to have that opportunity to worship the deity in that form too. And so then what happened?
So it manifested into a deity form, the Shila. And
that's the deity we saw at the very beginning. There's a Brahmin holding the deity in the back, and it's a really small deity. It's like this big.
Did you notice one of the pujaris had a Radha Raman tattoo right here on his forearm?
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool. Justified.
Yeah.
Devotional tattoos are bona fide. Raghunatha dasa Goswami is, and by the way, like I've never come close to the Shila, but I mean to the Radharaman deity, but they say that on the shoulder and on the knee you can kind of feel the 2 extremities of the Shila that split open, and because that's what happened, right? You didn't tell the story. What happened?
You probably know it better than I.
So he had these 8 Shilas, right? Then he went to the Jamuna to get water. And when he came back to his Bhajan Kutir, what had happened to one of the Shilas? It had manifested into Radharaman, that deity that you see there with 2 arms, and so according to the story, that Shila, one of the Shilas, blew up, so to speak, so it's a self-manifested deity. The claim is made, a self-manifest deity. So yeah, so Gopal Bhatt Goswami, he didn't want to be mentioned. He told Kaviraj Goswami, like, I don't want to be mentioned anywhere. That's why it's really hard to find any information on Gopal Bhatt Goswami, because he was like, humble, and he didn't want to be mentioned. So that's his disappearance days today. And then we've got Srila Kaviraj Goswami, Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami, who's the author of what book?
Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita, accepted as the most authoritative biography of Lord Chaitanya. And he was there when he was sitting at the feet, I think, of Sarup Damodar, when Sarup Damodar would tell, pastimes, and he took notes, and that's how and then he also didn't want to feel, he felt unqualified to write, but then there's a story of how he got some sort of revelation from Krishna. I think maybe Vignesh knows a garland fell from one of the deities. From Radha Madan. So he got this confirmation. It's interesting how these, the more advanced you become, the more humble you become, and you feel unqualified to do something that neophytes like me would feel like, yeah, of course, no sweat. Like I'm the chosen, I was made to do this, And then the more advanced you become, the more you're like, no, man, I'm not doing this. And then, it takes God himself to like say, no, like, I want you to do this. Far out. So yeah, we can beg for their blessings today, so that we can, continue in our bhakti, in our devotional service, free of a desire for name and fame. For example, I mean, who's familiar with the book Manah Siksha?
Bhaktivinoda Thakur, no?
No. Manah Siksha?
Manah Siksha.
Who wrote that?
My mother Urmila translated it.
Who wrote it?
Raghunath.
Yes, exactly.
Raghunatha dasa Goswami.
So what we're gonna, there's 8 verses. Let's start with this. I mean, this is, you know, sorry, there's 12 verses. Let's read them one after another. This is one of his most famous books, Manah Siksha, which literally means what, Vignesh?
Instruction to the mind.
Instruction to the mind. So he's like, hey, brother. He's like, hey, bro. And he's speaking to his own mind. So these are fantastic prayers. And so let's start our reading with that. Let's read them. I'll share the screen. Here we go. So we'll just read the Sanskrit, okay? Can you see? Is it large enough?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So this is Manah Siksha from Raghunatha dasa Goswami. Text 1. O mind, I grasp your feet and beg you with sweet words. Please cast away all hypocrisy and develop intense, unprecedented love for my spiritual master, for Brajabhumi, the people of Braj, the Vaishnavas, the Brahmanas, the Gayatri Mantra, the holy name, and the transcendental shelter that is the fresh young couple of Braj, Radha and Krishna. If you're interested in more, there's, you know, Urmila. Who knows Urmila Mataji or Urmila Prabhu? Everyone knows her?
Yes.
She co-authored a new translation of Manah Siksha, and she gave seminars around the world on it. So there's 2 actually on YouTube that are pretty cool, where she, you know, reads the verse and talks about it. And in this verse, she makes an important point, which is kind of hidden, but really important. And that is, he's telling his own mind to do what? What's the first thing he tells himself? Sorel.
To cast away all hypocrisy.
Okay, that's the negative, like cast away hypocrisy. But then he tells his mind to develop intense, unprecedented love, right? For this whole list, right? What's the principle behind here? The principle behind here is that one cannot become detached from sense gratification unless one becomes attached, or unless one has a greater attachment to Krishna. And what principle, what 2 words exemplify, or what 2 Sanskrit words from the Bhagavad Gita illustrate this
Param
point? Yes. Can you say that again? Golokananda Priya?
Drishta.
Param Drishva. Maybe Jacob and Sorel, you can note that down. We'll visit that in chapter 2. So probably not this week, but you'll probably see it with Madhavendra next week or the week after that. It's 259, if I'm not mistaken. And Prabhupada's translation to that verse is, the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste for such enjoyment still remains. But ceasing such enjoyment by experiencing a higher taste, like, you know, higher taste cookbook comes right from that concept. By experiencing a higher taste, one is fixed in consciousness. The embodied soul may be restricted. So you can, you know, you're like, no, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to have sense gratification. I'm not going to engage my senses in sense gratification. No. But you've got a desire for it. The taste is there. Oh, but man, would I love to have, you know, illicit sex. Oh, would I love to, you know, take intoxication, like to eat meat, whatever, you know, the 4 regs, right? But ceasing such engagement, you know what? No, I don't want this. Not because like I'm so strong and I'm gonna reject it. Like, you know, for example, we would say, you know, Mayavadis do and Zen Buddhists, but because of the alternative higher taste that we theoretically are getting from our rasa, from our relationship with the Lord. The higher taste that Krishna gives us, the param drishtva. Krishna reciprocates with our efforts to love him, to serve him, by giving us within our heart a higher taste, a pleasure. which is, superior to sense gratification in terms of value. And therefore, the analogy, like, okay, I've got $50, and if I tell you, like, okay, give me that $50, you'd be like, no, this is mine. Like, I'm not giving it to you. That's my only, it's my only money. But if I come to you and say, look, give me your $50, but here, first I'll give you 1,000. Here's 1,000 in $100 bills. Just give me your 50, right? It's a no-brainer. You'd be like, yeah, okay, because you're getting whatever, 950 in return. Higher taste. So here you see from the very onset, Raghunatha dasa Goswami is telling us that you got to develop intense, unprecedented love for those things, for those people, the spiritual master, Vrindavan Dham, the people of Braj, the Vaishnavas, the Brahmins, the Gayatri Mantra, the holy name, and Radha Krishna. And when you have love for them, then you can easily give up sense gratification. Vignesh Ji, read us number 2, just a translation.
O mind, don't concern yourself with the pious and impious deeds described in the Vedas. Rather, intently serve Sri Radha Krishna, Sri Radha Krishna in Vraja. Always remember that Lord Chaitanya is the son of Maharaj Nanda and that my Guru is most dear to Lord Mukunda.
So here we have, Vaishnavism as something that transcends, picky ritual. I'll give you an example. Last week we did a kirtan at a yoga studio here in Paris. And afterwards, one of the ladies there who had asked us to chant the Gayatri Mantra, but we didn't have time, we didn't want to put it into our schedule. She mentioned how, like there's this thing in India about how if you pronounce, one syllable of the mantra wrong, you don't get the full effect, right? And you've heard of that, guys, right?
Yes.
But you should also know, my friends, that this doesn't really apply to Vaishnavism. This applies to more sort of the ritualistic Smarta Brahman sects of Vedic followers. Like, for example, there's these Brahmins in South India, they recite the entire Veda, the entire Rig Veda by heart, right? They learn it from kids, from their babyhood. And, they believe that if you pronounce a long A as a short A, for example, or a short A as a long A, the whole thing is just useless. But in bhakti, we don't really believe that. We don't believe that. Now I'll give you 2 examples. One of them is, one of the names of Krishna is Bhavagrahi
Janardana.
Bhavagrahi Janardan. Janardan, who is Bhavagrahi? Vignesh, explain to us, please. What does that mean? What does Bhavagrahi?
Bhavagrahi means basically he basically asks for our emotion. It doesn't actually go for literal details of how exactly we chant, how exactly we do the process, follow the process. It's about our mood, our heart, how exactly we are devoted to Lord.
Our mood, our
moods.
heart, our bhava. What does bhava mean?
Like emotion.
Yeah, emotion, mellow, right? Or emotion. And grahi means
Accept.
to accept or to take. So it's Janardana, Krishna, he who accepts the emotion, the intention of the devotee. Well, my favorite example to illustrate this point is the story that happened here in ISKCON Paris back in the 1970s. Did I ever tell you that story about Tulsi?
I don't think so.
You've probably heard a saying, at least it was more prominent back in the day, that if your temple or your community has very flourishing Tulsi Devis, that's a sign that, there's healthy bhakti going on there. Did you ever hear that, Golokananda Priya?
Yeah, I heard that.
So if,
I guess
huh?
this is the Tulsi that I worship here. Yeah. It's healthy.
Hey, come on, she's in hell. She's pretty.
I'm just sitting next to you.
So there's this rumor or this saying goes, that if your Tulsi are really healthy and flourishing and in full blossom and everything, then that's a sign of, good, healthy, strong devotion. So Indradyumna Swami, who, when before he took sannyas, was a grihastha leader in France, remembers that in the Paris temple, where Radha Parashishwara used to be, they had, several super, super beautiful tulsi plants, were like really lush. And they were like, yeah, we must be doing something right here because these tulsis are so lush, So when Prabhupada came to Paris, the first thing they wanted to show Prabhupada was the tulsi, because it's kind of like saying, well, look at our bhakti, like, we're on top of this, we got this, right? So they took Prabhupada to the tulsi bower, or to the greenhouse, and Prabhupada took one look at these tulsis and said, these are not tulsi. They were like some other form of basil, but not the sacred basil that we worship as tulsi. It was not tulsi. So the devotees had been, worshiping, doing puja to a cousin of tulsi, but not the tulsi plant at all. Now, why is this relevant? Because Prabhupada said this, and this is where, this thing, we're coming back to Raghunatha dasa Goswami here. Don't concern yourself with the pious and impious deeds described in the Vedas. I mean, there's other points being made in this sentence, but I think we can add to this point the idea of Krishna being Bhava Grahi Janardana, and therefore the devotee is not so concerned about what I'm doing now pious? Am I going to get material pious credit in my next life, or impious credits? Or what did Prabhupada say after having said this is not Tulsi? He said, but it doesn't matter, because Tulsi has accepted your service nonetheless. You see, guys, they were not worshiping Tulsi, but because they thought they were worshiping Tulsi, according to Prabhupada, Tulsi still accepted their service. So this is where, Krishna Bhakti is so beautiful. As Hridayanamar says, the good news is that God is not a religious fanatic. So like, he understands the intention. Some devotees get all riled up. You're saying Hare Ramo instead of Hare Rama. Okay, fine, there's a correct pronunciation, but it's not like if you say Hare Ramo or Rama and it's not really Krishna's gonna be like, sorry, bro, like, I'm not counting that Maha Mantra, because you're right. So coming back to this verse here, don't concern yourself with the pious and impious deeds described in the Vedas. Like, don't worry about material piety and impiety. And you see that a lot in like Hindu contexts, Hindu families, which are not Vaishnavas. A lot of them are really about, doing like good material deeds in this life, so that, in your next life, you'll be richer or more handsome or more powerful, or you take birth on a higher planet, It's a whole sort of like, let's act in such a way that we get a promotion in our next life, right? And avoid things that will get us a demotion in our next life. But Raghunatha dasa Goswami is like, forget that, just do what? Vignesh?
Just have a intense desire for Lord.
Yeah, and what does he say exactly in the verse here?
Intent serves Radha
Intent is serve Shri Radha Krishna in Vrindavan.
That's it. Always remember that Lord Chaitanya is the son of Maharaj Nanda. So in other words, don't forget that Lord Chaitanya is Krishna, and that my guru is most dear to Lord Mukunda. So reminding us that, the role of the guru is important in the devotee's life. Very good. Sorel, read us text number 3, please.
Oh mine, just listen to me. If you desire to reside in Raj, birth after birth, and if you desire to directly serve the divine youthful couple there with great attraction, then with intense love, always remember and bow down to Srila Swarup Damodar Goswami, to Srila Rupa Goswami and his elder brother, Srila Sanatana Goswami, and to all their associates and followers.
You notice he's telling his mind, if you desire to reside in Vraj, what does he say?
Birth after birth.
Birth after birth. What verse from Lord Chaitanya does that remind you of? Maybe Vignesh knows, but okay, very good. Does Jacob or Sorel make that connection to the Sikshashtakam? Less. More the one you quoted first, the number 4. By the way, this is I have to tell you, as your teacher, you have to learn the Sikshashtakam prayers. Lord Chaitanya left only, what, there's 7 or 8. Shiksha Ashtakam, there's 8. He left 8 written verses. Like he only wrote down 8 things. You know, he taught the Goswamis, and right, we have all the knowledge coming down through basically the 6 Goswamis first, and also Ramananda Roy and so on. But he wrote down only 8 verses. So those are like essential. So you should really remember, you should memorize those, at least the English, and recite them like every day. You know. So what verse, well, Golokananda Priya answered right. That reminds us of verse number 4. And what's the translation to that?
This is another Najanam. Oh, son of Nanda Maharaj. No.
That's number 5.
Almighty Lord.
Almighty Lord.
I do not desire any wealth. No. Nadanam Jan.
Yeah.
No.
Janmani Ishwari.
Yeah, well, that's the point. But first, you know, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire a beautiful woman, nor do I want any number of followers. What do I want?
The cause is devotional service, birth after birth.
Exactly, as Vignesh says, birth after birth. So this is the significant, defining element of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. You know, this is our brand, so to speak. Like what other, vendors on the market of religions don't have, and that we have. Like our unique proposal, our unique, thing we're
USP.
selling, quote unquote, is this idea. What did you say?
USP, unique selling proposition.
Exactly. It is this idea of birth after birth bhakti, of devotion, birth after birth. Like, hey, I'm good with that. Like, that's all I want. I don't even want liberation because it's kind of selfish. You know, it's like I want to, get out of reincarnate of the samsara cycle, and it's all about me ultimately and my salvation. No, I want to serve you. Like regardless, right? Birth after birth. Even Bhaktivinoda Thakur goes as far as saying, I'd rather be a worm in the house of your devotee, or a dog in the house of your devotee. I think a worm in the house of your devotee, or an insect in the house of your devotee, than to be Lord Brahma averse to you, right? So Sorel mentioned, if he's telling his mind, if you desire to reside in Braj birth after birth, and, if you desire to directly serve the divine youthful couple there with great attraction, then remember and bow down to the great acharyas, basically, right? Bow down to the great acharyas. That's what we sing every day, Samsara Dava Nalalidalo Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinam. We honor our immediate spiritual masters, on the disappearance days, for example, of great saints. We really honor them, to remind ourselves that, it's only by the grace of senior devotees and saints that we can have access, or easier access, to the treasure of the spiritual world, right? Did you ever hear that song, if you're into Christian rock? I can only imagine. I can only imagine. You know that song? Jacob G, do you know it?
I think so.
By Mercy Me.
Yeah, I remember it.
I feel inclined to listen to it now with you guys, but we'll skip it. But it's really cool, because you see here, Raghunatha dasa Goswami is saying, if you desire to directly serve the divine youthful couple, so it's like literally seeing young Radha and Krishna right in front of your eyes and serving them, like touching them, seeing them, and that thought is echoed in that song by Mercy Me, who actually, this song is the most widely sold rock Christian, contemporary song in the history of the genre of Christian music, where the singer goes, I can only imagine. I can only imagine lyric. Let's look at these. I can only imagine. Can you see the screen here or not? Let me
Yeah.
share. Yeah. I can only imagine what it will be like when I walk by your side, or when I serve you, the divine couple. I can only imagine what my eyes would see when your face or when your faces are before me. I mean, can you imagine seeing Krishna face to face, seeing Radharani face to face? I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, or in awe of you? Will I be still? Will I stand in your presence, or to my knees will I fall? Will I be able to sing at all? You know, Sanatana Goswami describes in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita that when you go back to the spiritual world, Krishna gives you a big embrace. Cool, huh? Okay, verse number 3. I think it's totally worth it for us to take this little detour. I mean, it's by the mercy of Raghunatha dasa Goswami and the other acharyas that we will understand the purport of the Bhagavad Gita. So this is legit. Where is the, oh, here we go. So now maybe Jacob G, can you read verse number 4?
O mind, give up friendship and non-devotees. O mind, give up friendship with non-devotees, which is nothing but a prostitute who will steal the treasure of your heart, your desire to serve Radha Krishna. Don't listen to talks of impersonal liberation, which are a tigress who devours everyone. You should even give up attraction for Lord Narayan, who leads to the world of Vaikuntha. Instead, O mind, just worship Shri Radha Krishna in Braj, for they bestow upon the worshippers the jewel of pure love for themselves.
Important point, you know, Asat Sangha Tyaga Vaishnava Acharya. When Lord Chaitanya was asked by, I forgot who, how do you define a devotee of Krishna? In that particular instance, which Kaviraj Goswami mentions in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya said, Asat Sangha Tyag Vaishnav, Asat Tyanga Vaishnav, a Vaishnavachar. No, Asat Sangha Tyaga, yeah, a Vaishnavachar. That's it, right? So
Yeah.
the behavior, the definition of a devotee, the behavior of a devotee is that Asat Sangha. What does Sangha mean, Jacob?
Spiritual friendship.
Exactly, or association, or a community. So, and what does Sat mean?
Sat. Eternal.
Yeah, true, eternal. So what does Asat mean?
Temporary.
Temporary, unreal. So Asat Sangha means?
Eternal association.
Asat Sangha.
Sorry. Yes, temporary. Association with non-devotees.
Which is by definition Asat, which is impermanent or unreal. So Asat Sangha Tyag. Tyag literally means, Vignesh?
Renounce.
To renounce. So, and a Vaishnavachar, that's Vaishnav behavior, to give up, to renounce the association of non-devotees. So how do we do that practically? You know, as preachers, as Goshtyanandis, as those who want to spread Lord Chaitanya's teachings and the holy name in society, it means basically to be in the world, especially if you're householders, and to just be instruments of Lord Chaitanya's mercy to non-devotees, but try your best not to get influenced by the lust and greed and, the lower modes of nature that our beloved brothers and sisters are conditioned by because of their lack of Krishna consciousness, right? So
one of my teachers and friends here in Tucson, he often says to give association, not to take association from.
Right. To give association, exactly. I mean, I hate that analogy. Prabhupada, I mean, I sort of like it, but Prabhupada gave the analogy of going fishing without getting wet. Going fishing without getting wet. We have to pray to remain humble and not to develop a sense of sort of a superiority complex towards the unchurched, so to speak. But at the same time, we can't go to the other extreme and claim that there's absolutely no difference whatsoever between a practicing Vaishnava and a non-devotee, because there is, right? There is. So that's important. And that association with non-devotees is a prostitute that steals the treasure of your heart. So the treasure of our heart is to serve Radha and Krishna. When we associate with non-devotees, that desire, goes down. You've experienced it, right? Let's say you'll just, you break the regulative principles. right? The next day, come japa time, you're like, yeah, isn't it? You don't want to, because the taste is just gone. Like Krishna's like, see ya, I'm not in this holy name right now, or I'm much less in the holy name, and you're like, right? You break the principles, and you break the principles because of association with non-devotees. The next day, it's like, it's dry, right? The holy name is dry. You don't want to read the Bhagavatam. You don't want to listen to a lecture. On the contrary, where you come off the altar, or you've just gone out on Harinam for 3 hours, or you've distributed books, or you've distributed prasadam, and then wow, lo and behold, the holy name is extra sweet. The Bhagavatam is extra interesting to read, right? As Krishna reciprocates. And what is what is compared to a tigress who devours everyone?
Listen, talks of impersonal liberation.
Yeah. We're all one, we're all one, we're all one. A tigress that devours everyone. Okay, I'm going to read number 5. That's funny because I quoted this. I posted this on Facebook this morning, the same one. The highwaymen of lust and his friends have bound me around the neck with the painful, horrible, powerful ropes of many wicked deeds. So it's like, we're trying to practice bhakti, but then lust just like has the better of us, and then, greed takes over and anger pulls us, and we basically get hijacked. Sorry to bring it to myself, but this is a good example. I remember I went to Bangladesh with Bhakti Charu Swami, my Diksha guru. And literally, like, I wasn't in the car, but the other devotees in the other car, like a few hours before, literally got hijacked on the road. Like they were driving, and then all of a sudden they saw a big tree trunk in the middle of the road. And so when they slowed down, these thugs, these thieves came out of the woods and started, they were going to kill him. And so the driver like went in reverse really fast. And as he was reversing, one of the guys like pierced a knife through a godbrother of mine through his shoulder. He spent like 5 days in the hospital. And so there was blood all over the car, and the guy was driving backwards, in reverse, because he knew that if they were going to get killed. And so when he was far enough, he did a U-turn and drove the other way, and they barely escaped. So that's what lust and his friends do to us. We're on the road like going back to Krishna, Hare Krishna, and then we get attacked by lust, by greed, by anger. The highwaymen of lust and his friends have bound me around the neck with the painful, horrible, powerful ropes of many wicked deeds. So it's like, it's the result of our wicked deeds. It's the reactions. Oh mind, please scream out to the devotees of Krishna, the killer of Baka, I'm being killed. So next time, you guys can go to the temple and you see the devotees and just scream, I'm being killed. I'm being killed, Prabhus. Help me. Then he will save me. All right, Vignesh, read number 6.
O mind, why do you burn us both by bathing in the urine trickling from the ass of great deviousness and hypocrisy? Instead, you should delight us by eternally bathing in the glistening nectar ocean of pure love for Shri Gandharva Giridari, Shri Radha Krishna.
Why do you burn us both by bathing in the urine trickling from the ass of great deviousness and hypocrisy?
Jeez. Potent imagery.
It's like using a bad language in the Krishna service.
So deviousness and hypocrisy, we really have to pray to Raghunatha dasa Goswami, to Krishna in general, but today to Raghunatha dasa Goswami, to Raghunatha Goswami, to Kaviraj Goswami. Please make us honest in Krishna consciousness. Please make us straightforward and honest. Like really, like no hypocrisy. Just honest, like sincere. The word sincere actually comes from Latin, which means without wax. Cire. In French, cire literally means wax, and I guess cire in Italian. So it's sin, like in Spanish, sin carne or sin alcohol or sin, whatever, sin leche, right? Sin, whatever. I mean, without. So sincere literally means without wax. So without a covering of wax, without a veneer, no veneer, no hypocrisy, no putting on a facade, just being really honest with everybody, and especially with Krishna. Otherwise, we bathe in the urine trickling from the ass of great deviousness and hypocrisy. Instead, we should bathe in the nectar ocean of pure love for Shri Radha, Gandharvika Giridari. Sorel, text number 7.
As long as the imprudent, untouchable women...
Impudent.
Sorry.
Yeah, impudent.
As long as the impudent, untouchable woman of the desire for fame dances in my heart, why should pure love for Radha Krishna touch me? O mind, continuously serve my spiritual master, the leader of those who are dear to the Lord. Then my master will quickly kick out that harridan, and allow that pure love to enter.
So the desire for name and fame, again, a throwback to Lord Chaitanya's 4th prayer, right? Oh my Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. So if you notice, and I'm sure you can relate to this, Krishna very quickly in your devotional service puts you in circumstances where he forces you to realize, holy cow, I'm doing this for name and fame. I'm doing whatever I'm doing for name and fame. It's very clear. I want to be noticed. I want to be recognized, right? Whatever. It's like chanting, so-called really attentively. Hey, are you looking at me? You're looking at me. Look how I'm chanting, or, whatever, right? For name and fame, we're you got a YouTube channel where you're so-called preaching about Krishna and stuff, but it's all really about seeing how many subscribers you get, because that means, you got that many followers, who look up to you as basically as God, How many likes did I get on Instagram? That's why that whole, this whole social media thing can be so unhealthy, because it totally feeds into this name and fame, right? The fame. Wow, look, I got 72 people who saw my story today. And yesterday I had 51. Today I got 72. That means I have 72 people who look up to me, who gave me their time because I'm interesting for them, So not to say that we don't do these things, we get off social media, whatever, but our motivation really has to be pure. And so often we have to kind of take inventory and again, pray to Krishna that we know that motivation, please purify it so that it's, some percentage of what I do in your service, so-called, is actually for you. Like I often say, like 95% of what I do in devotional service is for name and fame, but hopefully there's 5%, and if there's just 5%, hey, at least it's something, right? Good. Text number 8, Jacob Prabhu.
So that he will mercifully smash my wickedness, even though I am a great rascal. So that he will give me the splendid nectar of transcendental love, and so he will engage me in Sri Radha's service. Please, O mind, with words choked with emotion, worship Lord Giridari here in Braj.
You see again the principle of higher taste, the principle of attachment to Krishna with the result of detachment from sin, detachment from lower modes and so on, right? How does he end here? Like, in order to get the result of having my wickedness smashed, of getting the splendid nectar of transcendental love, of, being engaged in Krishna's service, what do? Do we run away from sense gratification? No. What does he tell us to do here?
Worship Lord Giridari. I can't say his name.
Giridari.
Giridari here in Braj. I think I roll stuff. Sorry.
What does Giridari mean? That's okay. You'd be really popular in ISKCON Italy. Prabhu. Giridari. Hare Krishna. But what does Giridari mean? What's the definition of Giridari? Vignesh Prabhu? It's Krishna who?
One who holds the Govardhan mountain.
Did you know that, Jacob G?
Yes.
Right?
I was just reminded of it, yes.
Right. Govardhan Dari or Giridari, right? short for Govardhan is Giri. And so Dari is the one who upholds Govardhan hill. So by worshiping Krishna, the upholder of Govardhan, that's how we get all these blessings. That's how we get rid of the nonsense, and that's how we get the blessings, right? Not the other way around. It's not that by we try out of our own strength without experiencing any type of higher taste to give up sense gratification, that we just have no sense gratification. And no, there's a whole positive side, and that's where we invest all our money, so to speak. That's where we invest all our time and intentions, with the belief that Krishna is going to reciprocate. Like, as you'll see, Vignesh, this verse, Ye yatamam prapadyanti tam sataiva bhajamyaham.
Yes.
Golokananda Priya, you know that one? Ye yatamam prapadyanti.
Are you surrendered to me? I'll reward you accordingly.
Right?
Is that
Very good. Is that familiar for Sorel and Jacob?
Yeah. Bhagavad Gita 4:11, right?
Ooh,
Nice.
nice.
That was my first one that I memorized. That's why.
That was a slick one. All right, number 9. Number 9. Who's next? Golokananda Priya, right?
Oh mind, please meditate on Krishna as the moon of Raja's forest, as the Lord of my controller, Srimati Radharani, and please meditate upon Srimati Radharani, the queen of Raja's forest, as Krishna's controller, and also please meditate upon Lalita as the peerless friend of Radha and Krishna, Vishaka as a guru who teaches them many things, and Radha Kund and Govardhan Hill as 2 places, the mere sight of which bestows charming transcendental love for the divine couple.
So we're getting, really esoteric here, right? Who is the controller of Raghunatha dasa Goswami? Is it Krishna or is it Radharani?
Radharani.
Right? Saying my controller is not Krishna, it's Radharani. Now Krishna happens to be the Lord of my controller, but my controller is Radharani, right? And who's Krishna's controller? He says
Radharani.
So okay, the Lord of Radharani is Krishna, but the controller of Krishna is Radharani. So I guess the principle of how the woman controls the man, that applies both in the material world and in the spiritual world. that saying that the man who comes out in front of his house and he says, I am the master of this house, and I have the permission of my wife to say so. So it's kind of like that with Radha and Krishna here. I'm sorry, it's true. I mean, we cannot avoid the direct similarity here. Okay, Krishna is the Lord of Radharani, but Radharani is the controller of Krishna. Difference being is that Radha and Krishna are eternal identities, like they're eternal persons with their distinct personality eternally, whereas we, one life we're in a man's body, one life we're in a woman's body, one life we're in a man's body, one life we're in a woman's body, and one life we think we're black or white or Indian or whatever, Chinese, or so our identities are just fleeting in cosmic time, every second or every millisecond. Whereas here we're talking about eternal identities, right? And then Raghunatha dasa Goswami mentions about Lalita and Vishaka and Radha Kund and Govardhan. Is if you just have darshan of Radha Kund and Govardhan, you get love for the divine couple. Great. Text number 10, and then we'll redo 11 and 12, and then we'll take our break. O mind, please worship Lord Hari's beloved Radha. With the splendor of her beauty, she makes Rati, Gauri, and Leela burn with envy. With the power of her good fortune, she defeats Sachi, Lakshmi, and Satyabhama. And with her ability to control Krishna, she completely eclipses Chandravali and the other pious young girls of Braj. I have to say I'm, not very learn it here. I don't even know. Rati and maybe Golokananda Priya. Who's the Rati? Who's Gauri? Gauri is the wife of Lord Shiva?
Yeah, Rati is, I forgot. I don't
She
remember
the wife of
Rati.
Kamadev.
The wife of
Yeah,
Kamadev.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, Kamadev, Rati, yeah.
And Gauri?
Gauri is the wife of, Lord Shiva.
That's what I thought.
Gauri.
And Leela? Vignesh, would you know who that is?
Not exactly. Maybe Lakshmi Devi. No, I think Lakshmi is already mentioned
Lakshmi
elsewhere. So
Dasa.
maybe
Yeah, she mentions. And
she's
Sachi,
mentioned already also.
Sachi cannot be the mother of Lord Chaitanya because that would not make sense. So I don't know who Sachi refers to here. And Satyabhama is one of Krishna's wives, right, in Dwarka. And then Chandravali, right, is the quote unquote competitor, the rival of she's the left wing gopi or the right wing gopi in Vrindavan.
Right wing.
Right wing. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we should know these things. It's interesting. Indradyumna Swami, all the lectures he's been giving since COVID began are like filled with like tiny little specific details of Vrindavan. And so the point is, this is a verse about Radharani's glory, and even great feminine goddesses are transcendentally, we should add, because if we start saying that Gauri and Rati and Lord Shiva's wife and Lakshmi, are materially envious of Radharani, then that's a great offense. But there is such a thing as spiritual envy, which doesn't want to bring the other person down. It just increases one's service. And Prabhupada talks about it in one of his lectures or letters where he says, one of the gopis says, oh, you have done so nicely for Krishna. I want to do just as good, or I want to do better. And he brought that into the whole thing of transcendental competition with how many books were distributed. Interestingly, huh? Like at one point, Hriday Nanda, for example, he tells the story of how he was on a morning walk and there was Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and Hriday Nanda party in South America had defeated Radha Damodar, the Radha Damodar party, with all these brahmacharis distributing books in America. And at one point, Prabhupada told Tamal Krishna, knowing that Tamal Krishna Maharaj was very competitive, he's like, well, so just see, Hriday Nanda, he defeated you. And Hriday Nanda Maharaj describes he was like, so what are you gonna do about it? You're gonna take that? So there's a sense of transcendental competition as opposed to material competition where I want to what's the example in the Bhagavatam of material envy of a woman? The story of Chitraketu. Remember? King Chitraketu is trying to have a son because he's a king. He needs an heir apparent or an heir, how you call it, an heir apparent, right? And he can't have a son. Finally, Durvasa Muni or some great sage, I forget who, gives him and his wife the remnants of some sacrifice, and his main wife, I guess, or the first wife or one of the wives, and he's got a lot of wives, it's described.
10,000 or something.
Right? She eats that prashadam, and lo and behold, she gets pregnant, and 9 months later, she begets a son. And so the narrator, whether it's Shukadeva Goswami or whoever's telling the story, as you may have read, are you familiar? Is anyone not familiar with this story?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's in the Bhagavatam. You'll get to it. The co-wives becomes so envious because all of a sudden this wife, this queen who gave birth to the son, she's she's treated really specially with extra affection, and the other wives are sort of neglected. And so that's material. So what do they do? Vignesh Prabhu, what are the co-wives? Yeah. They poison the child.
I wouldn't exactly remember.
Okay, they poisoned the child. Thus fulfilling the prophecy of Narada Muni, who said, okay, you'll have a son, but your son will be both a source of great happiness as well as a source of great suffering. Because, he was all happy. I have a son. Then boom, the son dies, killed by his other wives. All of a sudden, he's goes from heaven to hell in an instant. But that's material envy. Whereas the envy that we hear about on the spiritual platform has nothing to do with trying to pull the other one down, but rather to encourage the other one and just to try to do something even better or with the same sort of bhakti for Krishna. Vignesh, text 11, please.
O mind, in order to attain the direct service of the two divine lovers, Shri Radha Giridhari, in the company of their friends, every day you must constantly drink with Shri Rupa Goswami, the fine nectars of worshipping them, chanting their names, meditating on them, hearing about them, and bowing down before them. And every day you must worship Govardhana Hill.
That's 6. His ecstasy
3, 4,
preceded him.
5.
No, 6. Worshipping them, chanting, meditating on them, hearing about them, bowing before them, and Govardhan, worshipping Govardhan. That's 6.
I think there are the parts of worship, right? The 5 parts, starting with the chanting their names.
Oh, okay.
Chanting, meditating, hearing, bowing.
Okay, well, it's 5 or 6.
Anyway.
So that's what we
And
do
it's
that.
and every day you should worship. Why?
And you notice that Prabhupada gave us that, the morning program, the sadhana that Prabhupada gave us, we worship the deity, we chant the Maha Mantra. I'm sorry, I'm just fiddling with this, with the cap from my phone, from the camera. So, we meditate on them, like whether we meditate directly on Radha Krishna, at least we're meditating on the mission, we're meditating on Mahaprabhu, on spreading Krishna consciousness. That's non-different from meditating on them. And we hear about them. We listen to lectures. We're, reading Prabhupada's books, and we offer obeisances. At least we do that, right? How many obeisances? Speaking of which, did Raghunatha dasa Goswami offer? It's described he offered like 10,000 obeisances a day or something like that. Like it's in the thousands. Can you imagine? Like getting down on your knees like several thousand times every day, and he was old already. Okay, who's next? Sorel, right?
Yep. These 11 excellent instructions to the mind grant all spiritual benedictions. A person who stays with the devotees, follows Shri Rupa Goswami, and with a sweet voice loudly sings these 11 verses will attain the matchless jewel of direct service to Shri Radha Krishna in the forest of Gokula.
Haribo. That's the blessing that Raghunatha dasa Goswami has given upon us today. Raghunatha dasa Goswami ki.
Hey.
Okay, let's take 5-10 minutes and read the Bhagavad Gita in the next session. Jai. The recording. So as I prepared for hours and hours and concluded that we should just read instead, let us read verse 20 and 22. Who was next after?
Jakob.
Is there someone in the background of somebody's house? No? Okay. This went quiet.
Not here.
All right, Jacob, read us the translation and purport. Verse 21, 22.
Okay. Arjuna said, O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies so that I may see those present here, who desire to fight, and with whom I must contend in this great trial of arms. Purport. Although Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, out of his causeless mercy, he was engaged in the service of his friend. He never fails in his affection for his devotees, and thus he is addressed herein as infallible.
Pause, sorry. Let me ask you, what story from Chaitanya Leela illustrates this point about how he was engaged in the service of his friend, he never fails for his affection, and how that touches the heart of advanced devotees?
Not ringing a bell here.
Vignesh seems to.
I think the story of the Brahman, the Vipra, who says that I don't understand anything.
Tell us the story.
What
Tell
is
us the
written in the
story.
Bhagavad Gita.
Tell us the story, Vignesh.
Well, I think I think when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was visiting touring the various places, he met one of the Brahman who was just reading the Bhagavad Gita.
Was he
and he was
reading?
just like crying
Was
while reading.
was he reading, or
Gita.
because was he capable of reading?
He was trying to read Bhagavad Gita. I think he was not capable because he was not literate in
He was
learning
illiterate.
the Sanskrit or the
Exactly.
language that
So
is
so
written
this
there.
this
Yeah.
Brahmin was illiterate, and yet he was somehow trying. And why was he trying? Because who had told him to?
His spiritual master, his guru, told him to read, and he was attempting to do that. And but I think he was very much impressed by seeing the image, I think, of the Lord as a Parthasarthi.
So his friends were
where
making fun of him. The other Brahmins were making fun of him. If I may add a few
yes,
stories before the punchline.
yes,
What happened, Golokananda? Someone said something.
Oh, the Bhagavad Gita was upside down. So yeah.
You what?
Bhagavad Gita was upside down. Everybody was.
The Gita was upside
making fun
down.
of him
The other
because-
Brahmins were making fun of him. Lord
Yeah.
Chaitanya comes, but the Brahmin's crying though. He's crying. And so Lord Chaitanya tells this Brahmin, like, what are you doing? Well, I'm trying to read, but because my spiritual master asked me, but I'm illiterate, and so these guys are making fun of me. But why are you crying then? And what was the answer, Vignesh?
I think there is he basically tells I'm like murkha. That is what he uses. I'm illiterate, but I'm just following the order of my spiritual master and trying to read it in a proper or without understanding what is proper and what is improper. And I think that is what the image, I think it refers to the Arjun, where Arjun is riding on the chariot and Krishna is charioteer. I think just by seeing that and how merciful the Krishna is, although being a supreme lord, he's just becoming a charioteer of his devotee Arjun. He becomes very much emotional by
There you
seeing
go.
that emotion.
There you go. So is it clear for everybody? Lord Chaitanya embraced him, said, you have understood Bhagavad Gita, like you understand, because it's such a touching idea that the creator of everything, God, the omniscient, all-powerful, supreme being, is like, you want to go left or right? Right? Okay. Becomes the servant of his devotee. What a beautiful concept, isn't it?
Yeah.
So please go on. As charioteer.
As charioteer, he had to carry out the orders of Arjuna. And since he did not hesitate to do so, he is addressed as infallible. Although he had accepted the position of a charioteer for his devotee, his supreme position was not challenged. In all circumstances, he is the supreme personality of Godhead, Rishikesha, the Lord of the total senses. The relationship between the Lord and his servitor is very sweet and transcendental. The servitor is always ready to render service to the Lord, and similarly, the Lord is always seeking an opportunity to render some service to the devotee.
Okay, stop. Sorry. But although this is about Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, it's connected to the six Goswami. What's the story here that I'm thinking of? A famous story between Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and Srimati Radharani. And Sanatana Goswami, the older brother, getting on the case of or chastising Rupa Goswami. Golokananda Priya? Anybody? There's a pastime which I think Kaviraj Goswami describes, or it's definitely a legit authorized pastime where Rupa Goswami was chanting japa, and it was really hot. It was a hot sun, and so then out of the blue, a beautiful young girl shows up, and with her own sari, she puts it in front of the sun so that there can be some shade on Rupa Goswami, and she starts sweating. And Sanatana Goswami, seeing that, realizes, oh my God, this is Srimati Radharani. And then later on, he gets on the case of his brother. He says, we're supposed to serve Radharani, and here you are accepting service from Radharani? What's up with this? Similarly, at one point, Rupa Goswami wanted to cook some sweet rice for his older brother, Sanatana Goswami. And as he was meditating on that, dressed in loincloths on the bank of the Radha Kund, like there's nothing. They don't have a home, they don't have a fridge, they don't have anything. And this young girl again shows up and says, you know, what are you doing? And I'm thinking of meditating. I'd like to offer some sweet rice for my brother. And she's like, oh, I've got all the ingredients. I'll bring them for you. And then she brings back all these ingredients, and he, I guess, on a fire or something, he cooks the sweet rice, which he offers to Sanatana Goswami, and it tasted so good. And Sanatana Goswami was like so impressed by the taste. He's like, wait, where'd you get these ingredients? And he's like, well, you know, a young girl came and gave them to me. And same thing, she's like, dude, I mean, sorry, but dude, this is Radharani. Like, we're supposed to serve her and not accept service. So there's this transcendental competition, right? The devotee, like Prabhupada says here, the devotee wants to serve Krishna, but Krishna is like trying to find an opportunity to serve the devotee. Again, the trademark of Bhakti Yoga, the trademark of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, something that impersonalists can't even, you know, conceive, or maybe they can theoretically understand, but they can't taste the sweetness of. Go on, G, sorry.
He takes greater pleasure in his pure devotees, assuming the advantageous position of ordering him, than he does in being the giver of orders.
Sorry, but what example does Prabhupada give about the big businessman and his grandchild?
Don't know that one.
Vignesh.
Is it like he forgot? It's like a spiritual kind of lost son kind of story that you're referring. The lost son.
Not so much the lost son. There's a story of this very famous, important businessman, and someone wants to go and meet him, and so he goes to the secretary. I'd like to meet Mr. So and so. He's very busy right now, and just sit down, and you'll be able to see him soon. And an hour elapses, 2 hours elapse, and like, well, yeah, I'd really like to see Mr. So and so. No, he's still very busy and in a very important meeting. And then like an hour later, the guy manages to squeeze by the secretary, opens the door, and sees that this really famous, wealthy businessman is on his knees and hands with his grandson on his shoulders, treating him like a horse, and he's playing with his grandson. Similarly, you know, God, the all-powerful Supreme Lord, takes more pleasure, like Prabhupada says here, in assuming the, what is it? What are the exact words that he used, Jacob? Assuming the
advantageous position of ordering him than he does in being the giver of orders.
Right. So just like the businessman, you know, he's his grandson. He he likes to be treated like a horse by his grandson. It gives him more pleasure than meeting with a prospective business, you know, partner. So similarly, God prefers to take orders from his devotees rather than give them. Go on, please.
Often Prabhupada also gives the example of like Krishna is like God at home, and like Vishnu is like God in office. So the same personality, but it's different nature when he's like at his own home.
Right. As master?
Since he is master, everyone is under his orders, and no one is above him to order him. But when he finds that a pure devotee is ordering him, he obtains transcendental pleasure, although he is the infallible master in all circumstances. As a pure devotee of the Lord, Arjuna had no desire to fight with his cousins and brothers, but he was forced to come onto the battlefield by the obstinacy of Duryodhana, who was never agreeable to any peaceful negotiation. Therefore, he was very anxious to see who the leading persons present on the battlefield were. Although there was no question of peacemaking endeavor on the battlefield, he wanted to see them again and to see how much they were bent upon demanding an unwanted war.
You know this thing about never agreeable to any peaceful negotiation? I'm sure Golokananda Priya and Vignesh know this story. What did the five Pandavas request? They were like, okay, you know what? Just give us this and we'll be totally happy. And what was the reply? What did they ask? Who did they ask? And what was the reply? Come on.
Yeah, I
We
think
asked for 5 villages.
5 villages. You get it, Sorel and Jacob?
5 villages.
The 5, right? You know that story too?
More or less, yeah.
Okay, please go on. So they asked for 5 villages, and then what did Duryodhana reply?
I will not give you.
Oh no, again your internet is failing us. Gokulan, just when you're getting transcendently warmed up here, your internet is failing us again.
the side of Hinduism.
I'm sorry. I have to. What's that culture? Delete
Yeah, I'm sorry.
what-
Yeah,
What's-
Cancel
I
culture.
don't know what.
Yeah, I have to
form
cancel.
England-
Sorry, I have to cancel you,
Cancel
Kalokananda Priya. You are canceled. Such a crazy world we live in. Okay, Jacob G. What was the answer? What did Duryodhana or I'm sorry, Kalokananda Priya. I unmuted you, but I think we're gonna have until maybe a few minutes your internet speeds up. We have to ask someone else because we can't hear your answer. Jacob or Vignesh, what was the answer?
Yeah, I think he told that Duryodhana replied, stating that I will not even give you the land equal to the tip of the needle.
There you go. I won't even give you a piece of land in which you can put the tip of a needle. What a jerk, huh? Please go on. Okay, so we just finished that. Great. Can you read the verse one more time, Jacob Prabhu?
Arjuna said, O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies, so that I may see those present here, who desire to fight, and with whom I must contend in this great trial of arms.
Great. So next verse, who is next?
Swapri.
Okay, if I pause myself, it's because I'm at my parents and the dogs are barking like crazy, so I apologize.
Sure.
So just giving a warning.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see those who have come to fight, wishing to please the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra.
Very good.
It was an open secret that Duryodhana wanted.
Maybe you can say purport, because there is a big distinction between
Purport.
purport.
Okay. It was an open secret that Duryodhana wanted to usurp,
take
Assert
over,
the kingdom.
steal.
to usurp the kingdom of the Pandavas by evil plans. In collaboration with his father, Dhritarashtra, therefore, all persons who had joined the side of Duryodhana must have been birds of the same feather. Arjuna wanted to see them on the battlefield before the fight was begun, just to learn who they were, but he had no intention of proposing peace negotiations with them. It was also a fact that he wanted to see them to make an estimate of the strength which he had to face, although he was quite confident of victory because Krishna was sitting by his side.
Cool. Translation again?
Let me see those who have come here to fight, wishing to please the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra.
Next verse. So now we have Vignesh, right?
Okay. Verse number 24. Sanjay said, translation.
I think we're at 23. I think oh yeah, I'm sorry, 24. I apologize.
Yeah. Translation. Should I read the Sanskrit and English, or how is it?
As you like.
Okay. We can read both. Sanjay Uvacha. Evam ukto rishikesho gudakeshena bharata senayod ubayor madhye stapayitva rathottamam. Translation. Sanjay said, O descendant of Bharata, having thus been addressed by Arjuna, Lord Krishna drew up the fine chariot in the midst of the armies of both parties. Purport. In this verse, Arjuna is referred to as Gudakesha. Gudaka means sleep, and one who conquers sleep is called Gudakesha. Sleep also means ignorance. So Arjuna conquered both sleep and ignorance because of his friendship with Krishna. As a great devotee of Krishna, he could not forget Krishna even for a moment, because that is the nature of a devotee. Either in the walking or in sleep, a devotee of the Lord can never be free from thinking of Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastimes.
Two things here. One is the thing about ignorance and sleep. There's an anecdote that Guru Kripa, ex-Swami Prabhu, tells how he was taking a shower really early one time, like at 2:30 in the morning or something. And he was naked in the shower, and Prabhupada came, opened the shower door and slapped him on the butt and said, "Ah, the mode of goodness." Something that Jacob you may relate to. And another time he tells, another time in the middle of the night like that, Prabhupada woke him up, I think touched him with his foot or something, and then said, and asked him, wake up. And then he said to him, he said, "Why are you sleeping?" And then Guru Kripa said, "Prabhupada, it's 2 a.m. And then Prabhupada said, I'm not sleeping. Why are you sleeping? And then he said, because I'm not a pure devotee like you. And then Prabhupada said, why are you not a pure devotee? He got really heavy on him. So remember, like sleeping is kind of, is the mode of ignorance. So we should definitely sleep enough, whether it's 6, 7, or 8 hours, whatever we need. But we can't forget either that, mode of ignorance, sleeping is the mode of ignorance. Another anecdote, when Prabhupada, devotees who saw Prabhupada sleeping, for example, when he took a train ride, there's this thing where I think Rameshwar or someone tells the story, or maybe it was, I forget the name. It's in those Prabhupada memories, where like Prabhupada would doze off like with one sentence, like he'd doze off like in the middle of one sentence. And then like 10 minutes later or whatever, an hour later, he'd wake up finishing that very same sentence. Second thing I wanted to talk about really briefly here is that oh, sorry, that's basically the only thing that the devotee is never free of thinking of Krishna's name. Giriraj Maharaj tells the story of how once on a morning walk in Bombay, right, a devotee told Prabhupada, sometimes I'm in Maya. And what did Prabhupada tell that devotee in that circumstance? He said, no, you're always in Maya. Sometimes you're in Krishna. Okay, please read the verse again, Vignesh Prabhu, and then we'll go on to Golokananda Priya. I'm asking you to unmute yourself, by the way.
Yeah. Should I complete the purport?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, please do.
Yeah. Thus, a devotee of Krishna can conquer both sleep and ignorance simply by thinking of Krishna constantly. This is called Krishna Consciousness or Samadhi. As Rishikesha, or the director of the senses and the mind of every living entity, Krishna could understand Arjuna's purpose in placing the chariot in the midst of the armies. Thus he did so and spoke as follows.
Translation again?
Yeah. Sanjay said, O descendant of Bharata, having thus been addressed by Arjuna, Lord Krishna drew up the fine chariot in the midst of the armies of both the parties.
Jai. Let's read number 25. Are you with us, Golokananda Priya? Oh yeah, you switched off your video. That's a good idea. Hopefully we can hear you better.
Yeah,
Yeah, sounds great.
hopefully. Okay. Bhisma Drona Pramukta Sarvesam Chamahi Sitam Uvacha Pata Pasyaitam Samavetam Kurun Iti. In the presence of Bhisma, Drona, and all others, chieftains of the world, the Lord said, just behold, Partha, all the Kurus assemble here. Purport. As the super soul of all living entities, Lord Krishna could understand what was going on in the mind of Arjuna. The use of the word Rishikesha in this connection indicates that he knew everything, and the word Partha means the son of Pritha or Kunti is also similarly significant in reference to Arjuna. As a friend, he wanted to inform Arjuna that because Arjuna was a son of Pritha, the sister of his own father Vasudeva,
Oh man.
he had agreed to be the Krishna mean when Arjuna to behold the Kuru. Did Arjuna want to stop there and not fight? Krishna never expected such thing from the son of his aunt Pritha. The mind of Arjuna was thus predicted by the Lord in friendly joking.
So please read the translation again.
In the presence of Bhisma, Drona, and all other chieftains of the world, the Lord said, just behold, Partha, all the Kurus assemble here.
So here's the first words of Krishna. Just look, all the Kurus who are here, right? And so Prabhupada kind of describes, he's kind of teasing Arjuna. Okay, verse 26. I think it's my turn to read. Translation. There, Arjuna could see, within the midst of the armies of both parties, his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, and also his Something's clicking here with the internet. Friends and also his father-in-law and well-wishers, all present there. Purport. On the battlefield, Arjuna could see all kinds of relatives. He could see persons like Bodhisattva, who were his father's contemporaries. I mean, imagine fighting with like I remember my father had one really good friend called Robert Langvillard. He was actually the first, he drove me to the Krishna temple the first. He was like a sort of a practicing Buddhist. He had polio when he was young, so he had this limp. And of all my father's friends, he was like the only sort of somewhat spiritual one. And I remember I went to the temple, I went to a lecture at some public program with Bhakti Charuswami, I remember in September 93. And I was just like blown away by his lecture, by the kirtan. And so I remember I immediately called Robert. And I was, Robert, there's a temple right out of Paris. And, you know, can we go? Can you take me there tomorrow? Can you take me there tomorrow? And he was like, yeah, okay. And so my dad was like, where are you going? Robert, where are you going? We were going to this temple outside of Paris. He's like, okay, whatever. But I remember, so, you know, they had a relationship. So just the idea of me killing him, I can't even fathom what it must be like to kill my father's friends. It's like, what? So here Prabhupada is saying, right, like his father's contemporaries, more than one of them, his grandfathers, you know, Bhishma and Somadatta, teachers. Like I still have a friend, a teacher from high school called Larry Morset. You know, I'm 48. I went to and I had him when I was 16 years old in Western Civ honors. And he gave us some extra things to read, like according to him, Bhagavad Gita, but I was probably too stoned to remember, but I do remember other books he gave us to read. And, you know, I'm still friends with him. And like he's old now, he's like in his late 80s. But, you know, the idea of killing him, oh my God, you know, what to speak of Guru, you know, imagine killing Hridayana Maharaj or Indradyumna Swami or Brigupati Prabhu, or it's just like the horror, right? So that's what Arjuna's faced with. And you guys could think about it, you know, think of people you really love in your family and just imagine you killing them or being forced to kill them. You know, so you can get into the psychology of Arjuna here, to the heart of Arjuna. Teachers like Dronacharya, Kripacharya, maternal uncles like Shalya and Shakuni, brothers like Duryodhana. He's kind to consider Duryodhana, who tried to kill him, his brother. You know, what a beautiful soul Arjuna is. Like there's this dude who literally tried to kill him, right? More than once. And he's like, yeah, he's my brother, man. How can I hurt him? Sons like Lakshman, friends like Ashvatthama, right? I mean, Ashvatthama later on kills his own sons, right? Draupadi's 5 sons, beheads them. Well-wishers like Kritavarma, he could see also the armies which contain many of his friends. Translation again. There Arjuna could see within the midst of the armies of both parties his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, and also his father-in-law and well-wishers, all present there. I think it's Vignesh's turn on number 27. Right? No, I'm sorry. Whose turn now?
My turn? I'm not sure.
It's your turn, Jakob. Don't be shy. We know you're not shy.
All right. Text 27. When the son of Kunti, Arjuna, saw all these different grades of friends and relatives, he became overwhelmed with compassion and spoke thus.
Ha! You got no purport. Okay, you can read the next verse.
Okay. Text 28. Arjuna's translation. Arjuna said, "My dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up." Purport. Any man who has genuine devotion to the Lord has all the good qualities which are found in godly persons or in the demigods, whereas the non-devotee, however advanced he may be in material qualifications by education and culture, lacks in godly qualities. As such, Arjuna, just after seeing his kinsmen, friends, and relatives on the battlefield, was at once overwhelmed by compassion for them who had so decided to fight amongst themselves. As far as his soldiers were concerned, he was sympathetic from the beginning, but he felt compassion even for the soldiers of the opposite party, foreseeing their imminent death. And while he was so thinking, the limbs of his body began to quiver, and his mouth became dry. He was more or less astonished to see their fighting spirit. Practically the whole community, all blood relatives of Arjuna, had come to fight with him. This overwhelmed a kind devotee like Arjuna.
Okay.
Although,
Sorry, but I wanted to share this with you real quick because he describes it really well. And who is he? Dun, dun, dun. Here we go. Finally, for some contemporary endorsement. After 50 years of a drought, we finally got some endorsement here.
You even brought Arjun in my life more to life, right? So tell me a bit about why Arjun was so synonymous with you.
The circumstance that he was in, for people that don't know.
Did you guys see this yet?
I didn't see the whole
Yes.
interview, just clips.
Okay. If Vignesh, you saw it?
Yeah, I saw the whole interview.
Yeah. Of course, every devotee will watch this because we're so starving for, like, oh my God, like Chuck Norris mentioned the Bhagavad Gita in a footnote to, his memoir. Yeah. It's kind of sad, but hey, this is where we're at historically, so let's take it.
Arjuna is in a battle. His family has tripped out. He's a wonderful archer. He's the best archer in the world, and his family trips out and take the kingdom, and they're like, they snatch his wife, and they're trying to disrobe his wife, and he's looking like, yo, what are y'all jokers doing?
I love it, how to reformulate Arjuna's language in contemporary, American language. What are you all jokers doing?
Like, and he comes home and he's like, and they seize the kingdom, and he can't believe that they have done this. And he's a warrior, and he could get the kingdom back. But these are his uncles and his brothers-in-laws and his teachers and people that he loved and trusted, and they took his kingdom. And they prepared an army, and they're going to fight Arjuna, and he's devastated that his family and his friends and all of that for material gain would do this to him, and he's deeply pious. And they prepare an army, the greatest army that's ever been assembled, except that they don't know that God is driving Arjuna's chariot. right? And they think they're going to tear through Arjuna, they're going to do all of this, but God is driving Arjuna's chariot, right? And even in that, Arjuna, he's like, how can me killing all of my family be the right answer, right? And on the other side of that, he's like, well, I'll just let them kill me. I'm not doing that. There's no version of me going into battle with them. I don't care how wrong they are. I don't care. And as I just got deeper and deeper into that story, it's like, I feel like that all the time.
Yeah. It's nice, isn't it, to see some endorsement from mainstream celebrities. Remember, I don't know if I told you, but Shyamasundar, the famous Shyamasundar, Beatles Shyamasundar Prabhu, he gave a seminar maybe 10, 15 years ago in New Vrindavan, a 3-day workshop called Preaching or Reaching Out or Connecting with Celebrities. And basically for 3 days, he just gave us the sauce. He was like, when we met George Harrison and the Beatles, we thought this was just the beginning. Like, we were gonna in future generations we're gonna meet all sorts of cellular, and you haven't met anyone. We're still stuck with George Harrison 40 years later. We're like, So of course, we can't be completely to blame because some serious mistakes were made in terms of our public reputation and image and and child abuse and this and that. But anyway, whatever the past may be, it's good that Krishna is in the heart of people like Will Smith and is bringing him forward. That's so cool. And we gotta congratulate Jay Shetty too, as jealous as I am of him. Okay, let's wait. I'm sorry. Who was reading?
I was reading.
Okay, please go ahead and finish this purport, and we're done.
Yes. Practically the whole community, all blood relatives of Arjuna, had come to fight with him. This overwhelmed a kind devotee like Arjuna. Although it is not mentioned here, still one can easily imagine that not only were Arjuna's bodily limbs quivering and his mouth drying up, but he was also crying out of compassion.
This is a really interesting point. Let me just mention this. You see, this is something that Prabhupada is telling us, but our Vyasadeva is not telling us this. Sanjaya is not telling us this, right? And so this is, I have to bring in a philosophical point that Hridayananda Maharaj made one time in the past, which I think is fantastic. And it's this: it's that if Krishna did something, or a pure devotee did something in the eyes of a pure devotee, that means he did it. Like, he did it. Like, in other words, if Prabhupada says, Arjuna was crying, then philosophically, it must mean that Arjuna was actually crying. Even if perhaps maybe, he may not, but because the pure devotee is seeing Arjuna like that, especially Krishna reciprocates with the mood, like we saw, and the feeling of his pure devotee. So here we get a glimpse into like the special vision of Prabhupada. Prabhupada is seeing something on the battlefield of Kurukshetra that nobody else is seeing, right? And we have to accept it on faith that, hey, if Prabhupada is seeing this, then even if it may not have happened, it did happen because Krishna reciprocates the desire of his pure devotee. Such a beautiful thought, I think. So please go on. Such symptoms.
The symptoms in Arjuna were not due to weakness, but due to his soft-heartedness, a characteristic of a pure devotee of the Lord. It is said, therefore, Yasyati bhaktir bhagavati akinchana sarver gunes tatras hammasate suraha harav abhaktasya kuto mahadguna manorathenasti davato bahi. One who has unflinching devotion for the personality of Godhead has all the good qualities of the demigods, but one who is not a devotee of the Lord has only material qualifications that are of little value. This is because he is hovering on the mental plane, and is certain to be attached by the glaring material.
Attracted. Energy. Is it attached or attracted?
Attracted. By the glaring material energy.
I'll give you a small story to illustrate this. When I was a brahmachari in the LAX at the LA airport, literally at the LA airport, I spent so many hours there. But when I was a brahmachari in the LA ISKCON temple, we'd go to the LAX airport, 6 days a week, 5.5 days a week, and spend all day distributing books there. And I remember we get this, once it was like the temple president gave us this pep talk, and I have to give it to him. He made a good point. He said, when you go out there and you'll see all these, this is LA, so it's it's Hollywood, and middle class, not like super poor people travel by plane, right? So it's middle class, upper class, and it's LA, the city of showing off and facades. And so he said, you're gonna see all sorts of really rich people walking down with their, they got their, they know they're flying on, so they're gonna be all dressed up, and you can't get intimidated by them. You can't get intimidated by them. They're going to be walking by looking like they're enjoying life so much with all their bling bling. He didn't use the word bling bling, but that was the idea. But you can't be intimidated by that because, you got Krishna consciousness. And I don't know if he quoted, but there's a verse in the 7th canto where Prahlad Maharaj, right? The Prahlad Maharaj, he says that, he says, without Krishna consciousness, no one can be happy. So, maybe these people, some of them were really pious Christians, and in that sense, I believe they're getting, reciprocation from Krishna. But assuming they're not really spiritual, you got all the bling bling, but your heart, your inside is empty, and you can't be intimidated by externals, and that I think applies to you guys, to us all. Like, we have to have faith and pray to have faith that, that our Krishna consciousness is really the greatest treasure out there. And, you may have less money than your neighbor, you may be less attractive than your neighbor, you may have be less healthy than your neighbor, you may have a more troublesome, relationship than your neighbor, your kids may not be as brilliant as your neighbors, whatever. But if your neighbor has no Krishna consciousness and you do, you've won, basically, right? Jai, can you read the translation one more time, and then one person can lead us into a kirtan for 3 minutes?
Arjuna said, "My dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up."
Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki,
Jai.
Raghunatha dasa Goswami ki,
Jai.
Gopal Bhatt Goswami ki, Jai,
Jai.
and Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami ki.
Jai.
Does anybody want to lead for 2 minutes? How about Jacob?
Oh man.
I feel
tomorrow, so offer it up, Jakob.
I feel the Paramatma telling me that Jacob has to lead us in kirtan. So I'm gonna mute everybody and just Maha Mantra for 3 minutes, whatever. And oh wow, you're all muted already. My God.